expectancy champion is 24 years old, and I mean that was an OCE, so it doesn't really count. The vast majority of professional players fall between 16 and 18 years old. There's a common myth in competitive Fortnite that once you turn 18 you begin to get worse, and I'm 30, so... But the science doesn't really back this up. When most people think of characteristics that decline with age, the first one that comes to mind is reaction time, as this typically starts to get worse when you reach somewhere between 20 to 30 years of age. There are slow and gradual decreases over time. However, this doesn't mean that just because you're older that your reaction times are bad. In this study, the best reaction time was actually recorded by someone in their mid-50s, with many participants still having very good reaction times even into their 70s. But reaction time is actually a horrible indicator of performance.
Yeah, it is.
A typical way to measure this is to focus on a specific area, and once the object appears, the participant must click, and the time between that is then measured. For a game like Valorant or Counter-Strike, this is pretty important because holding angles and peaks happen very, very regularly. But in Fortnite, there's just so much going on at all times that simple tests of reaction times don't necessarily demonstrate players' skill very well. That's why across a lot of studies, Luke doing latency has been found to be one of the key factors in esport players' success. Luke doing latency is essentially the time it takes you to assess your ever-changing environment and then make a decision. In Fortnite, your character only has a certain field of view, so if your character turns to look in a different direction, the time it takes for your brain to read and understand this new information and then make a decision is Luke doing latency. This also happens anytime the player takes your eyes off the crosshair of the screen to check the minimap or their loadout, as not only do they have to take in that new information, but by the time they've looked back at their crosshair, their environment could be completely different, so they then again have to take in that new information. During a single game of Fortnite, there are hundreds, if not thousands of times where a Luke doing latency cycle will occur. And the lower this delay is, the better your awareness will be and the faster you can become. So if, like me, you're wobbling about in the end game with absolutely no clue what's going on, Luke doing latency could be a massive factor. Luckily, there's actually been a ton of research on this, and unfortunately, this starts to decrease at age 24. It will differ from person to person though. The main study, which is titled Over the Hill at 24, found that a typical bronze League of Legends player at age 39, equal in all other respects to a 24-year-old player, can be expected to be around 150 milliseconds slower in their typical Luke doing latencies. Now, if we make an assumption that there are 500 Luke doing cycles in a typical competitive Fortnite match, this is a total of 75 seconds of delay that the older player has to account for. And the TLDR,
Older players need better hardware.
if you didn't understand any of that, is that a typical 39-year-old is roughly 15% slower than a 24-year-old. Many traits such as aim and mechanics can also be trained, which may make you believe that there's some way to practice your Luke doing.
That's why those 19-year-olds are like, all you need is a 60 frames per second monitor. You don't need anything better. You don't need anything better. Like, bro, I need 256 hertz at lower than a millisecond response time. I need the fastest keyboard and mouse and the best graphics and video processing ever. Like, that's what I need. Then I can compete.
Latency to prevent.
As a beauty of being older, you can afford better hardware. you can make more money.
Decreasing over time. However, unfortunately, this study also found no link between experience and practice with an increase of Luke doing latency. So there appears to be absolutely zero way to prevent this decline from happening. So is that it? You're 24, your career's over. Can't even hit a triple edit anymore. You're failing your bloodline and you're destined to live the rest of your life alone and miserable?
No.
Or something like that. So how am I at 30 years old still improving slowly? Some would say very slowly. I understand that, but I am still getting better. Well, that's just simply because of skill development. Academic psychologists seem to be the most productive and are at their peak at around 40 years of age. Now, of course, Fortnite is maybe a little bit different of a task than that. However, most professions also peak around this age as well. Let's say a skill ceiling of the best a Fortnite player could possibly ever get, and compare two players against this. Player A, who's completely average, and player B, who's a professional. The better you get something, the longer it will take to improve. So for the sake of this example, let's say that after 3 years of practice, player A will be at 60% of the best a player will ever be at Fortnite. Then let's say for the next 5 years, they improve 2% every year and then 1% every year after that. So for our non-professional player, let's say after 10 years of practice, they'll be at 72% of the human limit. And remember, these are just entirely made up for this example. So what's the difference with a pro? Well, in a previous video, I covered covered on genetics, I found that on average, professional gamers increase their own skill significantly faster than the average player, even with the exact same amount of practice over time. So player B, our pro, may be at 80% of the skill ceiling after the 3 years, compared to player A's 60%. Let's just assume they follow a similar progression following that. So after 3 years, player B will be significantly better than player A will ever get. But what happens when both of their look doing latencies starts to get worse at age 24? Let's assume that both players started at the age of 14 and after 10 years of practice are both 24. From then until they're 39, their look doing latency on average will be decreased by 15%, as we already know. But that doesn't mean their skill will decrease by 15%. In fact, the parts of our brains that are responsible for knowledge, such as reading, math, science, vocabulary, history, and all that kind of stuff, all continue to improve until we're approximately 60 years old. So assuming both players increase by another, let's say like a random number, 7% over this 15-year period till the time that they're 39, the negative impacts that the look doing latency decrease will have may only reduce this by a 2 or 3% negative impact. Given many jobs around the world peak in their 40s, it's safe to assume that the improvement of skill outweighs the negative effects of aging until somewhere in your 40s. So up until their late 30s, at least, players should continue to increase their overall skill, which as someone continually, yet slowly, as I may have already mentioned, improving at 30 years old, I can absolutely attest to this. So why are there only a handful of competitive esports players over the age of 30, and specifically why do Fortnite players get worse at 18? Well, this actually for the most part has nothing to do with their actual physical aging. The reality is, it's probably not even worth trying to become a professional Fortnite player. There's only 100 players in the world with over $250,000 in earnings, and if we start from 2019 where competitive really began and became consistent, that means there's only 100 players in the world who have earned consistently $50,000 a year on average. For teenagers and for adults in certain parts of the world, this is a great salary.
Yeah.
However, for the vast majority of players, there's already a slim chance that you're a top 100 player in the world, and it's just a much better investment of your time to try a completely different career path.
Yeah, like a fucking job.
Now, this risk is kind of worth taking as you're a teenager because most teenagers don't have bills to pay and mouths to feed, but as players turn into adults, the risks just become less and less worth it.
Yeah.
Once guys get into their late teens, your interests change. There's partying, drinking, university, relationships, and whatever the hell these guys are doing
And that's why you get worse at video games.
in these videos. And all of
I honestly think that's what it is. You turn 18 and you can go do shit in the world. And you got to move out of your house. And you got to get a job. So you play less. That's what it is, really. I don't think it has anything to do really with your age. Like, when I was unemployed living at my mom's house I'm 32. I'm about to be 32 next month. But at 29 years old, so it wasn't that long ago, I had a rough patch. I got back into gaming hardcore, and I was playing every fucking day. And I got into Masters on Apex Legends, like, within, like, a year of playing, Took me a long time because Apex has a high skill ceiling. But when I first downloaded Apex, a couple years before that, I was like, had my own spot and I was like working and all that shit. And I only made it to I couldn't get into gold. But then again, like, I wasn't like trying as hard or something like that. But I had all the time in the world to keep queuing up when I was unemployed back at my mom's house. And so, like, I was just playing that shit religiously, and I got into Masters, and I could have gone for Pred. Now it's like I work, and I get 3 days off a week. Now, like, I'm on spot again. And so, like, I haven't, obviously Apex is also dead, too, but, like, I haven't gotten into, like, competitive games like I used to. I just don't feel like, it's like I don't have the time to compete at a high level, and if I'm going to play those games, I want to compete at a high level, and I need time to do that, which I don't have, like, as much time. I can get off work and stay up late and then sleep in until I have to go to work. But, like, my life revolves on that. And I have a daughter and shit. So, like, I just can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just really can't. And I like vagina. So, like, that also, too, plays a factor. Like, I put down the live stream and the video games to go get vagina. So, like, that's one thing. But, like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I definitely feel like I still have the reaction time. And, like, my hands don't fucking, I still learn, play gameplay loops and all that shit just fine. I mean, I don't feel like I'm any worse. I feel like I'm better at gaming than I was before, to be honest. I used to be really good at Rainbow Six Siege when I was like 24. But, like, other than that, like, I still feel like I'm still sharp in the head. But I also take vitamins and shit. You gotta take vitamins and your nutrients and shit and take those vitamins for your brain and shit for focus and cognition. Those definitely help. I take those shits all the time though, because I just want to age gracefully. I don't want to age like a fucking Joe Biden.
This take your mind and focus off of practicing their esports. And to compound that, the older they get, the more these responsibilities add up, like a long-term partner and kids, and this is obviously all very time consuming.
And your girl don't want you to play video games all the fucking time, especially like if she comes over, you know what I'm saying? Or like she'd be like, oh, can you get off the game? They don't want to watch you play video games. They want to, like, you know, go do stuff. That's what girls want to do. Unless they're gamers themselves and you can get them on the game. But then they also want to do stuff, too. So it's just less grinding with the boys.
This is just going to lead to a lot less players in their 20s and 30s trying to become professional esports players, which means that the vast majority of these professionals will be younger in their teens. And here's the real secret sauce. A lot of the top 100 players in the world become victims to their own success. A lot of them, in particular in Fortnite, have earned so much money that they're already in positions to financially set themselves up for life. So they've achieved their goals competitively and financially, which makes it even more difficult for them to justify continuing to grind something that they may not enjoy. Then the icing on the cake here is that their social...
After a while, you stop liking that game, especially when you're the best and you get bored at it. And you've already made millions of dollars, and now you have girls in your DMs. You were some nerd playing a video game, and now you have bitches in your DMs. And you can look max, you know what I'm saying? And now you're like, oh, I'd rather go to the club or the bar, or go to like travel somewhere and go find some bitches. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would, you know what I'm saying? I won't blame these motherfuckers. They young, you know what I'm saying? Single, like, I would do it. Mr. Savage, what a knockoff Mr. Beast.
Tools have probably exploded so much from becoming some of the best players in the world that they can then just make more money from content and streaming. So it really is no surprise there's such a turnaround once players hit 18. But is this avoidable? Well, I personally believe it is in 4 simple steps. Firstly, learn to enjoy the process. If these players are burnt out and hate the game, practicing will feel like a chore, and that will create a negative feedback.
Yeah, Apex Legends never felt like a chore to me when I was playing it. I also had nothing to do, but I enjoyed the grind, queuing back up and playing again, you know, even if you get fucking swept. Unless it was from hackers. That was the only thing that killed it for me was the hackers, because like, I felt like I was good enough. If there was no hackers, I would be good enough to get into Pred for sure. That's how I felt.
Loop where they'll become more...
I just couldn't... There's people who can get around those hackers by queuing up and like getting those games that were good and just keep doing it. But that takes so much time to like have to combat like just skill-based matchmaking and fucking hackers. I just couldn't do it.
Burnt out, and it'll just continue. In my interview with Malabuka after he won FNCS in Season 1, he said the main thing that still motivates him is that he just simply enjoys playing and competing in Fortnite, which is a really common trait in almost anyone who's successful at something for a long period of time. Hey, I really enjoy making Fortnite videos, hence why I'm still doing it over the last 4 years. Secondly, time. If you've played for 5 years and still have 0 earnings, the chance is you probably aren't going to be a top 10 player in the world. You're probably just not cut out genetically for it. The time invested into becoming the best player in the world is no joke, and it is not for everyone. If you're not in a position where you're okay with basically not making any money for a few years, attempting to play 10 hours a day to be the best may not be worth it for you, and maybe a different career path is a better choice. Thirdly, playstyle. As players age, the reduction in their look-doing latency will make them slower. However, this can be overcome by changing their playstyle, rather than trying to be...
Yeah, it can. You have to change your playstyle, but also too, like, I noticed one thing, like, when I was playing Apex, I couldn't play that game tired. It didn't matter how much energy drinks I drank. I know these kids there can, like, go for 10 hours a day, but, like, if I was tired, like, I'm just not performing. So like I would play so once I started like losing more and not getting good placement, I would just get off. And that was the thing for me. That was how I grinded up to masters. And like I just didn't try to like force myself to keep pushing even though I was tired. And that was the thing. I had to have good night's rest before. I couldn't drink the night before. Like I had to be straight up rested to like play that game at a high level. Like that's what I noticed.
The fastest or most mechanical player in the world, like Peterbot, watch how guys like Tops HD or Queasy play and try to mimic that playstyle. They play slower, more deliberate, and more controlled, and this actually increases their awareness, and for older players will negate the look doing latency decreases with time. Now these guys aren't that age yet, but their just playstyle is good to replicate. And lastly, health. Age-related diseases accelerate the rate of neural dysfunction, neuron loss, and cognitive decline, aka your brain's just not working very well anymore.
Yeah.
This is also true physically, as poor posture for many years impacts your lower back, shoulder, elbow, and wrist health over a long period. So ensuring you exercise, sleep well, and have good nutrition, and of course manage your stress, all become more important the older you are, so you can actually continue to practice. Now, I may not be the best player in the world, but I did become the best player in Scotland for 6 days, and you can see
that's like what I was saying. You have to like rest. I had to make sure I wasn't like doing anything crazy the night before. Like I had to make sure like if I was tired, I still to this day like that's why I just been reacting to shit lately on Twitch, is because like I usually would just hop on the game all day today. It's my day off, and I was like I want to just game all day, but like I already know like I'm just not in the mood to play a game. It's crazy because I used to like be a hardcore gamer, but it's just like I don't want to waste like my energy playing another game when there's a game I want to play tonight with my friends and shit like that. So it's like I already know like
exactly how I did that.
I'll get brain mush after a while. But that's a good video. Why Fortnite pros get worse at 18 years old. I don't know completely if it's like they get worse or it's like their interests change. I think that's what it is. You have more responsibilities. And so, like, you can't just, like, you can't spend 10 hours a day. Like, summer vacation for these kids are amazing, probably, when they're out of school, you know? So, yeah, I'm going to give him a subscribe. That was a good video. I like his video. It was good.